Mari, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I am a rising senior in Morse College. I'm studying political science and Russian at Yale, and I am a member of the women's rugby team.
Wow. Wow. Thanks for being here, Mari. I am joined, or we are joined this morning by our co-host, who will also be answering questions that Mari has for us, Assistant Chief Anthony Campbell of the Yale Police Department.
Good morning, Mari. It's great to have you. Good morning, Chief. It's great to be here.
Good morning, Chief. So, Mari, we understand that there are some questions that students often have, and Chief Campbell and I are here, and we want to be responsive to those questions. So, fire away.
Okay. So I guess the first thing would be is what do you two, as like members of the public safety team, think is the most important thing that students should know about keeping safe on campus?
Mari, I'll take that first one. I think one of the most important things to know about keeping safe on campus is that there are a number of layers of protection. A lot of times you think about safety on campus and you automatically think police. Here at Yale, the great thing is that you have multi-layers of protection. The police are part of that, but you also have security, which falls under the public safety umbrella, and you have a lot of the support services such as cameras and others, and technology that is a part of it. And I think that one of the greatest tools that students have as a resource for keeping safe on campus is the Live Safe app. The Live Safe app is a tool that gets downloaded to your phone. It helps with us being able to identify where you are if you have the GPS part of it activated. It puts you in direct communication with Yale Dispatch, which will triage the type of service you may need, whether it is a police emergency, a medical emergency, a fire emergency. It also has resources which will let you track where the shuttle buses are. If you need to take a shuttle anywhere on campus, you don't have to stand outside and wait for the shuttle in the inclement weather, or put yourself in a position where you could be approached by someone. You could stay inside until the shuttle bus comes out. It also allows you to request from security what's called a safe walk. You could request that security will come and walk you anywhere on campus 24 hours a day. You can request help if you get locked out of your room, and that happens about 10,000 times a year at least, for security to come and open your room door for you. And additionally, it provides services even if you're not necessarily on campus. It can access your contacts, and you can have someone that you trust watch you walk from point A to B. And if you don't make it to that location in a certain amount of time, it notifies them so that they can check in with you and call for assistance if you need that. So it is a great tool. I think it brings about a lot of situational awareness for individuals and allows you direct contact with all of the resources that are available on campus. So that, I would say, that's one of the most important tools and things you need to know about staying safe on campus.
Okay. So I have a clarifying question because you did touch on it a little bit,
Sure.
and I know that I've seen people running around in different uniforms on campus.
Yes.
What exactly is the difference between police and security in like their mission or in what they do?
Great question. I'm really glad you asked that because there have been some significant changes. So, as part of the umbrella of public safety, you have the police department, which is 93 members. Those are sworn, certified police officers. Police officers in the traditional uniform, very similar to the one that I'm wearing. We have badges, we have the power of arrest, and we have weapons. Security wears a different uniform. Before the pandemic, they were in a uniform that was more like a green, yellow, bright yellow. They did have badges, but they were unarmed. They are not sworn. They have no power of arrest. They cannot do anything physical with people. And their uniforms have changed recently. The uniforms now are more the black and white. Uh, the badge that they used to have has been removed so that there wouldn't be any confusion, because many people used to think that they were police officers, and they are not. The uniform is now black and white. It has their full name on it, first and last name, and it says Yale Public Safety on it. So security's role is to be highly visible, to be eyes and ears for the community, to do escorts that I talked about in Live Safe, and to provide information to members of the campus as to directions, things they need. You'll also see them at key locations such as at the entrances to many of the buildings, at the med school, Science Park area, the law school, and other areas. So that's the main difference.
Okay, and expanding on that a little bit, because as of last year and this coming year, I'm also living off campus, and I'm not sure if like the Live Safe or if like the security team like extends that far. Like I know I haven't seen any security people on my like apartment block ever. So what do you think that students like me who live off campus need to know about staying safe on campus versus staying safe in like the greater New Haven?
That
So I'll
Chief,
take that
take
one.
that. Yep.
I think you raise a really good point, Mari. And so, first and foremost, the Yale Police Department, we have what's called a defined patrol area. The Yale Police Department do not patrol all over the city of New Haven in New Haven neighborhoods. We have a very defined patrol area, and members of the community, or anyone for that matter, can access a map to our defined patrol area on our website. It really, if you think about it, just to give you a frame of reference, if you look at the map of Yale University and a couple of maybe 2 or 3 blocks beyond, that is our defined patrol area. But Yale is a big place, so we have a pretty sizable footprint. Now, our security officers also work within a defined patrol area as well. They do not patrol or stand posts in neighborhoods throughout the city. They don't. Okay. However, you can call and ask for an escort anywhere on campus, and many members who live close to campus will get you as close to your apartment where you live as possible without going outside of our defined patrol area. But it also brings up something that you raised as well, staying safe on campus versus off campus. I think one of the most important things that I want members to know is that there are people and systems that are working 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, to provide a safe campus for members to work, live, and study, as well as in this city. There are public safety professionals who we all know, who we work with extremely closely to ensure the safety of members of this entire community. And when I say this entire community, I'm talking about all of New Haven. We support the New Haven police in their endeavors. We have overlapping patrols within our defined patrol area here at Yale University, okay? And we also support the New Haven police in many other ways as well. So I think the takeaway is that both at Yale and in the city of New Haven, there are dedicated professionals who are looking at crime. They are looking at crime trends. They are being innovative about how to keep the city and city members safe, as well as the university community. There are partnerships both on campus and off campus with community members that also lend to the safety of our community. This is, New Haven is a small city in between New York and Boston, but I would argue on any given day that many of the innovative practices that members of people are seeing elsewhere now have been in place in New Haven for many, many years. Members of the New Haven community understand what community policing is. They want community policing. They don't want to be police. They want to police. They want to work with the police in keeping their communities safe. So these are all things that I think are important. They don't want policing to be done to them. Rather, they want to, they want to work with the police. So these are things that are all important for members to understand. We are a small city, but we're a city, and it's important that we all look out for one another. And that's why we work closely with the New Haven Police and all of the fire department, the Office of Emergency Management. We all partner together. So people should know that there's a lot of people, a lot of systems working on their behalf.
Okay, and so related to that you just touched on, so what is your understanding, or like what would you say to those students that come to the university with like serious, like legitimate concerns about the police, like based on their experience or like what they've heard in the news, and about being policed?
Students don't come to campus and all of a sudden, because they're on a college campus, not see, not experience, and not feel what the rest of this country is seeing, feeling, and experiencing. People come to this campus with experiences, either direct or indirect, and they, as a result of that, have an opinion about the police. Here's what I want students to know. I want students to know that the Yale Police Department is a progressive police department and understands and believes in rightful policing. We are not a department that is sitting on the sidelines hoping that things will quiet down and we can get back to normal. Absolutely not. What's happened over the last year has changed this country and should change policing. And we have worked really, really hard to reflect on how we can improve services here at Yale University. The one thing that I can share with you, and I'll share a few, but the one thing I want to share with you is we're trying not to use police for non-police related matters. So what do I mean by that? Over time, and this is not just at Yale, but in higher education in general, the police were called for everything, mainly because the police were on campus 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So when decisions were made about who's going to handle this or that, well, call the police, they're here. So we became everything to everyone on campus. Students don't necessarily want the police knocking on their door because their neighbor complained about loud music. Is that a police-related matter? No. Okay, so we're removing police officers from situations like that, where there's no crime committed or nothing criminal about it. It's a dispute between two neighbors. We're thinking about really closely about how we can utilize the existing public safety enterprise here at Yale, police, security systems, and the Office of Emergency Management to apply the appropriate public safety resource to the public safety need. Okay, so we're very thoughtful and judicious about how we're using our resources. Another thing that we're doing is we're listening. As you just said, students are coming to campus, many with a lot of thoughts, some with some uncertainty about the police. It is important that we listen to all voices, even those that are most critical of the police, because that's when not only do we learn, but we can understand what the needs of our community are. For instance, the example that Chief Campbell brought up earlier about the change in the uniforms for Yale security officers. We, on the one hand, many years ago, when crime was high, we wanted to have a sense of omnipresence. So we had our security officers in this lime green, highly visible uniform. We didn't realize that over time, people that were coming to campus didn't have the context, and they looked to their left and they looked to their right, and they thought the police were everywhere. They felt like they were being over-policed, even though the people they were looking at weren't police officers. So we needed to respond to that. So we took away the badge. The security officers no longer wear a badge. It says public safety, and their first and last name is on their shirt because we want community members to know that these are folks that are not only are a part of the community, but they're there to be helpful to them. So, and lastly, I'll say that, as we're talking about this right now, it's important that we constantly evolve. We are committed to continuous improvement. We are not just sitting back saying, okay, we've changed a couple of policies, so we're all set. No, we are constantly reflecting and hearing from our community members, thinking about how we can improve the level of service, how we can draft policy that is sensitive to certain populations, and how we can also learn from the other best practices that are taking place elsewhere on campuses in America, in our cities in America. So we are a learning organization. We are here for our community, but we're not perfect. But I'll have to say we work darn hard to serve this community.
Thank you. And so another question that I have, since you were talking about the difference between like Yale security and Yale police, and how police are like different in their powers than security, and that they're armed. Could you explain why it's necessary to have armed police on a college campus?
Yeah.
Sure. Go ahead, Anthony.
So the difference between police and security is police are sworn and trained differently. Police officers are certified through the Police Officer Standards and Training, which is out of merit, and they are the people who give the authority to all police officers in this state to have the power of arrest, to be able to carry a badge and a gun. And police officers are the only members of our society in this country who get to carry a weapon and get to, when necessary, seize a person's constitutional rights. So police officers can use force. That force can be their very presence in that uniform, up to and including deadly force, and that is why they carry guns. It is necessary for a police officer to carry a gun, and even in this campus setting, many people don't know that Yale University Police Department is the oldest campus police department in this country. And it was started by 2 New Haven police officers who were assigned to the campus because of some mischief that was going on at the Yale Medical School, where some of the students were digging up cadavers to do experiments on them for their studies. Well, lo and behold, you fast forward 126 years, you have a full-fledged police department which covers everything from officers in patrol who respond to calls, criminal activity, larcenies, burglaries, etc., all the way up to more serious matters such as robberies, burglaries, and in some instances in this campus's history, homicides and serious offenses. So the New Haven, all officers in the Yale Police Department wear New Haven Police Department badges. That goes back to the history of how this department formed. And they have the same powers of arrest. As Chief Higgins spoke about earlier, even though they have the same power of arrest throughout the entire state of Connecticut, they operate within the defined parameters or defined boundaries of the university. And they are trained in the same fashion as all police officers in the state are, but they also get additional training in de-escalation, training in crisis intervention. Normal police departments, and I could speak from a place of authority on this because prior to being an assistant chief here, I was the chief of police for the city of New Haven. And I can tell you, as the chief of police for the city of New Haven, I had roughly 400 men and women assigned to police the entire city of New Haven, all 130,000 residents. And at the time, I didn't have enough police officers to cover the city. We were always burning through overtime. Officers wind up going call to call. I can tell you right now, the city of New Haven really has a significant shortage of its officers. But even despite that, the type of training and the type of assignments that officers on campus have to deal with is a little bit different. But they have to be prepared for any eventuality. Unfortunately, in this country, which you're probably more aware of than someone my age is, shootings happen on campus. Serious crimes happen on campus. And to stop an active aggressor or an active shooter, we have to be armed and ready for any eventuality. We have to have the ability to take someone into custody, someone who may have a weapon, someone who may have intentions to harm an officer or a member of the community. And having a weapon allows us to be able to do that. So that is mainly why officers carry weapons, because they're fully fledged police officers. They're required to carry a weapon as a fully fledged police officer, but we also have to be ready to respond to any eventuality which may come upon a member of this community.
I think what Anthony said is really important. I just want to advance a couple of points. Police officers are armed, or they're not police officers. And Yale University has a range of services available within the public safety division. And that goes from having a small core group of armed officers to a much larger group of unarmed security officers. There's many more unarmed security officers on this campus than there are police officers, to another cadre of professionals that manage our public safety systems. Okay, the access control here, the camera systems, much of the lighting, all of the alarms. This is a research institution. There's so many things that go on here, so many things that are done here. Security systems here at Yale, it's a big deal. Okay, so we have so many more people that are a part of the public safety enterprise here, then that it's just, there's 93 police officers, but out of that probably 300 members of public safety, it's really a small core group that, as Chief Campbell said, are prepared for any eventuality, especially trained for the nuances and the specialties of a campus environment.
And I have a question about what you just said, Chief Higgins. So besides what Chief Campbell said about not overstretching the already limited manpower of the New Haven Police Department, are there any special needs or reasons why there's a distinct Yale Police Department as opposed to not just being a part of the New Haven Police Department?
Absolutely. I think in answering that question, I want to go back in history. So even though the Yale University Police Department is the oldest campus police department police departments really didn't begin to grow in numbers until after the 60s, or right around the 60s. On college campuses, there were demonstrations and protests and all sorts of activism as a result of the war and matters regarding policing on college campuses. And as a result, municipal police departments were dispatched to college campuses to police. And it didn't go very well. The municipal police departments weren't in tune of the needs of a campus population, students between the ages of 18 and 21, or the needs of an institution. So it was thought, and I believe in this, that campuses needed their own specialized police department, so that were trained in higher education, public safety, and all that goes with it, versus a municipal police department that is really the police department for the entire city. The distinction between a Yale police officer and a New Haven police officer is that when a Yale police officer is communicating with a student, a faculty member, a staff member, or anyone in the Yale community, and they're talking about what department they're in, or what have you, something specific to their affiliation with Yale, that they understand what they're talking about, versus someone who's coming from one side of the city to Morris College who knows nothing about Morris College, can't even get into Morris College, and doesn't even know which entryway. And heaven forbid, in an emergency, they would know nothing about a complex campus like Yale University. So that's a really good question, but we can't expect the city of New Haven or college campuses in the United States can't expect their host city to provide policing services for their campus or their campus population. It works best when we work collaboratively, and that's what we do here in New Haven. Work very collaboratively with the
and just to touch a little
bit
on what the chief was saying, the Yale University is a city itself within the city of New Haven. And so just as towns next door to us, West Haven, East Haven, and others have their own police departments, they have those police departments because those police departments know the geography. They know the community, and they're expected to be able to respond to that community in an appropriate way and provide services to that community. For the city of New Haven to have a city within a city where the officers, as the chief pointed out, do not know the geography, do not know the demographics, because the demographics within this city are far more diverse than the city of New Haven itself. You have people coming from across the world to attend Yale University, and that brings with it some pretty specific challenges. Language challenges, cultural challenges, people who are coming from communities where the police serve a different purpose than they do here in the United States. Some communities where the police really don't exist in the same way they do here. And we have to take all of that into account when we are training and responding to members of this community. And to expect a municipal police department to be able to respond to an additional 20,000+ people, a city within a city, and provide the services that are needed within this campus is really unfair to that community.
There are a number of specialized types of police departments in the United States. If you go to different airports, you'll see the airport police. If you, I was close friends with someone who worked for a forest police. When you go to different places, there's different types of special police for that population that they're serving. So that's a really good question, but it's a question that we hear often. And as Chief Campbell put it, it's really not something that's ever seen in the United States, and those that have done it have gotten away from it and have created or developed their own public safety systems to include a small corps of armed police officers.
Okay, so my last question that I have here is, you were talking a bit about how like the Yale police communicate with students. So how should students expect the situation to go like the other way around? So like if there is a problem, who should students like expect to communicate with? Like who should we call, and how should we expect that the public safety team
That's a great question. You know, in the past, as the chief pointed out, the police on this campus and many campuses became the end-all be-all. There's a problem, call the police. A student is not feeling well, call the police. There's a noise complaint, call the police. Well, now we have what is called a differential response, meaning that you're going to get the appropriate resource for the type of situation that you're dealing with. Now, the one thing I do want to say is, if a student, no matter where you are, on campus, off campus, if there is an emergency, and by emergency I mean, an act of violence is going on, someone is trying to break into your room, someone is following you, accosting you, a crime is occurring, you pick up the phone and you dial 911. That call will be routed over to the New Haven PSAP, Public Safety Answering Point. They're going to ask you where you are, what the situation is, and when you identify that you are a Yale student and you are on campus, they will transfer that call over to the Yale dispatch. Yale dispatch will answer the phone In the past, they used to say Yale Dispatch, Yale Police Department. Now they'll say Yale Dispatch. Is this a police, fire, or medical emergency? Based on the information that you provide them, they will then give the appropriate response. If you call and you say, oh, my roommate is sick, they're vomiting, they fell and hit their head, they're conscious and breathing, they will dispatch the appropriate resource. That's a medical emergency. They will dispatch EMTs, and they will also contact security, who are required to open the doors to the campus, to the college, so that the EMTs can get to the room and provide the medical services. If there's a fire, they will send the fire authorities. And if there is a crime, then they will send law enforcement. So now, instead of law enforcement being dispatched to everything, you will get the appropriate response. So you can expect to, in many instances, to have security respond with EMTs to open up doors, noise complaints, security is handling those to respond to that. And if there is a crime that is in progress or that has occurred, then you can expect to have law enforcement respond to that. So it's all about the appropriate type of resource for the situation. That's what you can expect.
Okay, thank you.
I thank you
those
for
were all the
coming
questions
on and
that I have.
not only asking the questions, but really, this is how we get better. Not only answering these type of questions, but understanding your point of view, the lens through which you're seeing the world and experiencing the world. We need to know that. This is how we get better. Helps us to sharpen our skills to be better leaders, and to understand the ways in which we can better serve you. So thank you for coming and sharing with us today and asking these questions.
Mari, before we close, I also want to let you know that something else students can expect, in addition to a differential response where we're assigning the appropriate resource to the public safety need, is that the Yale Police Department has a sensitive crimes and support unit that is headed by a Sergeant Christina Reach. Our sensitive crimes and support unit is dedicated to assisting victims of and investigating cases of sexual violence, sexual misconduct, including stalking, intimate partner violence, and harassment. Our sensitive crimes supervisor serves as a liaison between victims of these crimes, the Yale Police Department, many times the New Haven Police Department, or the appropriate campus offices. Our sensitive crimes and support liaison, Sergeant Reach, also works very closely with the Sexual Harassment and Assault Response and Education Center, often known as the S.H.A.R.E Center, and Title IX coordinators here on campus. So we started this unit probably 11 years ago when I became the chief, to be more responsive to sensitive crimes, and I have to say that we're really happy about how we're interfacing with the appropriate offices on campus. And I think if you talk to members on campus or some of the folks in these offices on campus, they'll share with you that there's a very professional response. So it's important that students know that we take sensitive crimes very, very seriously here at Yale University, and more specifically within Yale Public Safety.
And to the chief's point, one thing I wanted to share with you too, Mari, is that part of our differential response hasn't just been whether or not the police are going to respond, or whether security is going to respond, or whether it's going to be a medical emergency or fire emergency. We've even refined it even more so within the police department. As you know, in this country, many people suffer from mental illness, and many people can have crises at any time. Being at an Ivy League university, many of the students are put under a lot of pressure. And things happen at home, things happen on campus, and students can find themselves in a crisis situation. As I told you before, I was the former chief of the city of New Haven, and from a standard standpoint, there's something called crisis intervention training, CIT. And what that means is that your officers receive, above and beyond their normal training, specific training in crisis intervention. The standard is to have about 20 to 30% of your entire department trained in crisis intervention, so that if they're responding to a person who's having mental breakdown, a crisis of sorts, they have special training to be able to deal with that individual. I'm very proud to say that at Yale University Police Department, 100% of the officers are trained in crisis intervention. So, in addition to all of the officers being trained in crisis intervention, over the last semester, under the chief's direction, what we did was we launched a pilot program, because we come to understand that not only are people coming from around the world to attend this university, there are some people from right here in this country who may interact with police, are bringing their experiences with police, and sometimes those experiences have been negative. So this uniform doesn't represent the same thing to everyone, and we understand that, particularly people who've been marginalized throughout our society, people of color, black and brown people. So knowing that this uniform may trigger a negative response, and that's the last thing you want to do when someone is in a crisis, what we did was launch a pilot program so that we could have officers who were in plain clothes, crisis intervention trained officers, respond to a student who is having a crisis. So rather than having a uniformed officer respond, a plainclothes officer responds to assist that individual who may be in crisis, who may have posted something saying that they're going to take their life or that they're feeling suicidal. We have found that it has been well received, so much so that some of the students who, in fact, had to be hospitalized because they were a danger to themselves or to others, even as the non-uniform officers were escorting them over to the health plan so that they could receive the services they need, they said to us, "I'm so thankful that you came not in uniform, because I didn't want people to see me leaving with the police. I didn't want to get into a marked police car to go to the hospital to receive the services I need." And so it's been appreciated. The officers appreciate it because then they don't encounter so much resistance. The people who are receiving the services and need the help and have reached out or had a family member reach out to get them the help they need, they appreciate it, and it works towards that goal of community wellness. So that's another thing you can expect from us in the future when it comes to crisis intervention and the type of response you'll get.
Okay, thank you. That's really interesting, because I know as students we hear those acronyms like thrown around a lot, but I certainly didn't know all of those details, and I'm glad I do now.
Awesome. Happy to educate.
Mari, we want to thank you again for being a part of this podcast, and we really do appreciate your questions. Chief Campbell, it's about noon. Let's go grab some lunch. I'll see you in the hallway, and we can talk about some of the questions that Mari asked, and also talk about how we can share what's on some students' minds with our officers, so that they're prepared to respond to them, and also they can think critically about what students are thinking.
Sounds good, Chief. I'm good and hungry, and we'll also talk about who we're going to get next on our next podcast, because Mari was great.
Mari rocks. Take care.
Have a good one.